Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren and today I'm doing a follow-up video. So I did a tasting history video last week about mead. And so he said he was going to take a break and do some other videos, whatever. And then he was in 6 months, he was going to test out his mead to see if letting it sit for longer affected the taste. Now, I don't have mead, but I wanted to drink along with him a little bit today. So I have Peach Bush Light, which is very sweet. And I figured it's as close as I'm gonna get right now to to mead, because it is a sweet beverage. So that's where I'm at. And it's in my Budweiser cup that I have because why do I have that? Oh, this lady that used to come to this restaurant that I worked at back in Baltimore, she had all of these like old steins and beer mugs and stuff, like none of which are in production anymore, and gave us all choices. Like she gave us all stuff that she let us just choose them, which was really cool of her. She also had all of these like old mugs that were like from old airplanes and like old airline companies, like these glass mugs from like Pan Am and things that like don't exist anymore. So I got a whole bunch of them from her, and then I gave them to my cousin who was at the time studying to be a pilot. Anyway, that was a lot of history from me. But I'm looking forward to this. This is called Dragonheart for a Viking King. Not sure exactly what's going on, except for the fact that we are going to have mead involved. And everyone was telling me that he usually puts a little Pokemon in the background of his video. So we've discovered his little Pokemon. Anyway, let's begin.
Heart and mead. Today we're eating some heart and mead. Sorry. I tried to come up with a better opening than that, but that
You did not try very hard, did you?
So that's what you get. But it is true. Today we are going to be drinking the mead that I made 6 months ago, now slightly aged, as well as eating some roasted heart, a delicacy enjoyed by kings during the Viking Age. So thank you to the Great Courses Plus
I feel like it's going to be kind of stringy, you know, kind of gamey.
Sponsoring this video as we partake of heart and mead, this time on Tasting History. So today's dish was inspired by a conversation that I had with archaeologist Daniel Serra, co-author with Hannah Thunberg of An Early Meal. We were discussing my desire to retaste the mead that I had made back in the fall, and I was looking for a dish to accompany it. And he said that the mead would have been drunk during special occasions because honey was quite expensive. So we were looking for something that might also be enjoyed on special occasions. A meal fit for a king, you might say. Enter the heart of a beast, prized for its rarity due to the fact that most animals only have one heart, and because it's thought to imbue the eater with some of the qualities of the animal. So it would have been a staple at any feast, and usually reserved for the guest of honor or the king, the warlord, whoever was sitting at the high chair. Now, there are no recipes from this time period, really, so we have to rely on archaeology as well as the writings of the Germanic and Norse people. And when I read this, imagine Sean Bean reading it, because it'll give it more gravitas.
Okay.
I dreamed my hawks from my hand had flown, eager for food to the land of all. I dreamed their hearts mingled with honey, swollen with blood. I ate amid sorrow. That was from the Poetic Edda, a collection of stories that form the basis of Norse mythology and much of the legends of the Germanic people. Hardly a recipe, though. It's basically heart and honey.
Blood.
So we do have one extra ingredient.
Heart, honey, and blood.
Honey is particularly appropriate today because we are tasting our mead.
I'm so
for
excited
today's
to see what that comes
your
out
mead
like.
is one heart. Now, I'm using pork heart, but you can use lamb or beef, though if you do use beef, then you'll probably be inclined to think of Captain Beefheart, at least if you remember musicians of the 1970s, and that's kind of weird. Also, do you think that you could become a famous musician today with a name like Captain Beefheart? I think not.
I mean, maybe on TikTok.
A half cup or 118 milliliters of honey, 1 or 2 leeks, a few juniper berries,
I like
Juniper berries
juniper
that you buy at
berries.
the store are usually dried, so you want to grind those up into a powder. And Daniel and Hannah recommend also using lingonberry, which I love lingonberry, but they're very hard to find fresh or
Yeah.
even freeze-dried here in Southern California during
I really have only ever had lingonberry, like a compote, like a lingonberry compote, and that was way back in college when I worked at IHOP. They had lingonberry pancakes, and they were pretty popular.
this time of year. They're usually done and preserved with a bunch of sugar added, so that kind of defeats the purpose, so I'm not going to be using them.
Bummer.
And a few slices of European-style bacon. The bacon's going to help to keep the meat from drying out too much. Another popular method in the Middle Ages was called barding, and that's where you wrapped it in Shakespeare.
Yeah,
That
it was
where
like
you would wrap
singers?
the whole meat in bacon, something that we still do today, and that also keeps it from drying out. And you can learn about other wonderful...
You know what? That makes sense. Bacon's got so much like fat and grease in it, so that makes... That's brilliant. That's actually really clever.
medieval cooking techniques in one of my favorite courses on the Great Courses Plus, Cooking Across the Ages. It is a course that I repeat over and over again, especially when I'm doing research. It's filled with great inspiration, and besides the fact that it has excellent history, it has the charm, wit, and genius of the great Ken Albala, one of my food history heroes. And being an on-demand video learning service, the Great Courses Plus really holds all of their lectures to that high standard. World-class teachers walking you through pretty much any subject that you can think of. It's an ever-growing catalog with over 11,000 video lectures.
I recently watched a video. This guy like holds a note for like 35 seconds, and I tried, and I could not get past 20. Holding out like a single note. Granted, I was singing kind of quiet, and apparently it's easier to hold it for longer if it's a belt. Haven't tried that, but I was very upset with myself. I was like, man, I used to be able to hold a note for a really, really long time.
On everything from cooking and history, of course, to philosophy, travel, nature, and even investing. So if, like me, you have a lifelong love of learning, you can start your free trial today by clicking the link in the description, thegreatcoursesplus.com/tastinghistory. Now, let us dive into the heart of our episode. So take your heart. By the way, every time I even touched that heart, all I could think of was the guy from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the Kali Ma, Kali Ma. It's very disturbing. And then cut the fat from the top. And it's not just fat, it's also like the aorta and all those tubes at the top that you don't really want to eat. There is some fat in the heart, but very, very little. And what there is waxy and not really something that you want to eat. So just slice that off and add in bacon instead. Then slice it down the side and open it up, cutting out any large heartstrings. Yes, there are heartstrings. That is a real thing. There are all sorts of little connective tissue bits in there, and you can leave some, but you'll know which ones to take out because they just don't look like they should be eaten. Also, you want to run this under some cold water when you're done with that, just to make sure that you're getting everything out. Then chop up your leeks and chop up your bacon and put them into a bowl together along with your ground juniper berries. Then mix in about 2/3 of the honey.
Okay.
We'll save the rest of the honey for basting the heart while it is roasting. Now, you might have too much stuffing, and that is okay, because it really depends on the size of your leek and the size of your heart. So don't worry if you have too much, but go ahead and stuff the heart with as much mixture as you can. Now, how you cook this is really up to you. Later on, we're going to listen to a story from one of the sagas where they roast a heart on a spit. So that's the definite way to go if you can. I don't have that here in my kitchen, so I am roasting mine in the oven. I set my oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 Celsius. I did wrap mine around a skewer just because it is going to be easier to handle while basting. Then with some twine, tie the heart up tight and baste in honey before setting it in the oven on a roasting pan. Now you're going to cook this for about 45 minutes a pound, but I really encourage you to use a thermometer to stick in there and make sure that the meat has gotten to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 Celsius.
See, it's one of those things that's like, I do eat meat, but like watching it be prepared, if it like, or like cut into like that, like chicken breasts are one thing because they don't look like anything. But as soon as it starts to look like something, I kind of like have a moment. Like I kind of have a moment. And I don't like to look at it. So yeah, if it looks a little too human, I start to like panic a little. And I don't like to see it. I was like, I'll do my things off the bone as much as possible, and I don't want to see the inside of a heart. Ugh. Anyway, that's just me.
Before taking it out of the oven. Now, while our heart roasts, I think it's a good time to retaste our mead. It has a lot of sediment at the bottom, which I'm going to try not to get too much of. But let's see here. Oh, so fizzy. All right. It is so clear. So if you remember, before it was very foggy, and now it's perfectly clear. So something has changed. It's also a lot more effervescent than it was 6 months ago. Let's give this a taste. It's actually really quite alcoholic. It's not sweet. There's a little sweetness to it, but
Weird. I chose my drink
like
because it was
drinking
sweet.
honey water. This is really good. Maybe I should become a mead maker. Is that a good career choice? I don't know. Yes, I think it would be. Mead maker, maker of mead, Max the mead maker. Anyway, if you haven't seen the first episode, I will put a link in the description and probably up here to where you can watch me actually make the mead and taste it for the first time. This is also a good time to make sure that you have subscribed to Tasting History, and go ahead and hit the like button while you're down there. It really does a lot for the channel, and that
Do
way
it
you
for me
won't
too.
miss any future tastings of mead. Though I think next time it's going to be Babylonian beer, because this summer I want to make Babylonian or Sumerian beer actually. Anyway, all of that done. Let's get into some history. Kind of.
Kind of. Kind of.
So today's history is interesting because there is a kernel of history in it, but what we're going to be talking about is actually the myth that kind of wraps around
that's
that
even
kernel.
more fun.
Sometimes it's hard to tell what is real and what is not, what has been made up.
Especially because the way they wrote history at the time was often couched in story and mythology, and it was a little bit more flowery than we think of today as like being a legitimate source, because they were like, this is what happened, but like it doesn't have to be exact.
And that happens a lot. Even in the Mead video that I did 6 months ago, I talked about how the term honeymoon came from the practice of, after a Saxon wedding, a month or a moon's worth of mead was consumed. That actually happened, or something like it happened, but the term honeymoon didn't arise until much later. And it was actually something that the story, it was something that the Victorians just made up.
Of course they
something
did.
that they were constantly doing.
They did that so much. The Victorians made up so much bullshit that people just like accepted for ages and ages and ages. Like, just so much things that the Victorians just invented. There's so many like terms for various like weaponry, for instance, that we have that like people just think is real, but it wasn't. The Victorians invented like names of certain types of swords, but it's like it was a long sword. Like, yeah, you have a guy that was a long sword. It's like whatever it was that you just said. Nope. Still just got a lot. Like, there's just so many things like that where we just accepted the things the Victorians invented wholesale, and we're just like, oh, Victorians.
And now we call that invented tradition, i.e. a lie that someone just made up that stuck around until it just became accepted as fact. It's just
There weren't
how
that.
it
Well,
goes.
also, like in the Victorian era, there weren't like a ton of fact checkers, or the internet wasn't there. You didn't. People could just say stuff. I mean, that's why there was so much like drugs and all of the medicine and everything. It's like no one knew. Like people just made up stuff and just said things, and it was difficult to check them on it. And so if they had enough credibility, like you just believe and then you pass that along. And I mean, honestly, I do that to this day sometimes. I usually admit when I've just saying stuff. There are certain things that I know and I remember, but there's other times that it's like, oh, I heard about this. And then I'll just say something, and then I'll usually put a disclaimer in there. But I don't actually know if that's true, because I don't want to be spreading misinformation if I can avoid it. But sometimes I do just say stuff.
And we like to think that, making up myths is something that was done long, long ago, but it's not. The Victorians did it. we're still doing it today. But what we're talking about today, it did come from long, long ago. See, the recipe that I'm making today, the talk about the honeyed hearts and made from hawks and everything, that comes from a story mentioned in the Poetic Edda. It's also mentioned in the Volsung saga, or the Saga of the Volksungs. And one would assume that it's pure myth, but it's not, because the person who's having the dream in the story is named King Atli, who history knows as Attila the Hun, who was a very real person, just ask the Romans.
Shit.
See, the Volsung saga is one of the heroic legends of the Germanic people that lived in southern Scandinavia and modern-day Germany and Poland and that kind of area. And during the twilight years of the Roman Empire, they were butted up against the lands of the Huns, much of which is now like modern-day Hungary. That's where the term comes from. And several of the characters in the saga are based on real historical figures.
That's so cool.
And the Germanic and Scandinavian people loved historical fan fiction, and they would take these real characters and put them into new and kind of crazy situations. It's like the 6th century equivalent of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Well, in this saga, there are actually 2 references to the eating of hearts. The first is King Atli, or Attila the Hun, who has a dream of eating honeyed hawk hearts. But then his wife, Gudrun, who is also based on a real person, comes to him and says, it's actually not hawks. The hearts of thy sons hast thou eaten, sword dealer, all bloody with death and drenched with honey. Yeah, she killed his sons and then fed them to him. And then she kills him, and then she burns the hall with him and everyone else in it.
Damn, Gudrun!
Killing that whole part of the story off. But it's actually the other story of heart eating in the saga that I really love. And
how did Attila the Hun die for real,
it's portrayed in one of Wagner's operas in the Ring cycle, in the opera Siegfried, which I'm really
actually
enjoy.
Curious. Well, according to Thought Co., Attila the Hun died mysteriously on his wedding night with no obvious source of injury. Some believe he was murdered, and others think he died of alcohol poisoning. So that's interesting. Like I said, I was just curious. I wanted to see how he died for real.
These are the operas with Ride of the...
She didn't, apparently, so maybe his new harem wife poisoned him, but it seems like he was not Titus Andronicanized.
Valkyrie, which everybody knows, as well as Brunhilde, who is often depicted as having a winged or a horned helmet, though that came from a costume designer at the end of the 1800s. Vikings probably never wore horns on their helmets. There's a lot of stuff about the Vikings that is not true that kind of arose around that time, including the fact that Viking was more of a profession. So the Viking Age is a time period. Viking was a profession. It means raider or pirate. So not everyone at the time was a Viking. It'd be like if in 1,000 years, today is remembered mostly for banking, and we are living in the banking age, though that doesn't make us all bankers. Anyway, it's just a pet peeve of mine. Back to the story. So this is the story of...
It'll probably be the crypto age, though. The influencer age. The age of the influencers, but most of us aren't actually influencers.
Sigurd, one of the great heroes of Germanic legend. And he had a sort of stepfather who was a dwarf named Regin. And Regin asks Sigurd to kill his brother Fafnir because when Regin and Fafnir's father died, leaving a bunch of gold and treasure to them, Fafnir took it all for himself. The only thing is, Fafnir, who was a dwarf, somehow turned himself into what at this point is described as a snake. So Sigurd and Regin go to find Fafnir.
So I've heard of Fafnir the dragon. I've heard of that one. So again, I know a little bit about the Edda and some of the stories in it, but again, that's because I went through a Norse mythology thing. So I do remember certain names and I remember certain stories, but then a lot of that information did get swallowed up by by Marvel and stuff that happened in that. So I'm just wait. The original myths. I have to reset my brain back to the original myths and not what Marvel did to them. And then to even make it even more crazy what the MCU did to them after that. And I'm just wait, no, I gotta remember what the originals were.
Fafnir. Fafnir leaves his lair once a day to go get a drink at the edge of a lake. But on the path, Sigurd notices that it includes a cliff with a 30 fathom or about 180 foot drop. And he's like, I thought you said this was a snake. And Regan's like, well, it's a big snake. But you're brave, you got this. Just go dig a little pit along the path, and then when Fafnir goes over, just stick him with your sword.
Sigurd had like a magic sword or something.
And then Regan leaves. So Sigurd is digging this pit when an old man with one eye walks up to him and says, Sigurd,
you in danger, girl.
Fafnir is not a snake, he is a dragon, and when you stab him, his blood will come out and it will burn you alive. So dig some pits around you so that when you stab him, the blood goes in there. I don't really see how physically that's going to work unless he stabs him with an umbrella and the blood like goes over the umbrella. I don't know. Anyway, the guy who might have been Odin, it's really unclear,
I feel
he
like
leaves.
definitely Odin.
But he makes all of the pits and lies in wait. And soon, Fafnir comes a-crawling. And it's said that he's so large that the ground shakes with each step and that he spews venom in front of him the entire time. Not a snake. But Sigurd...
Also, like, what the fuck, Fafnir? Like, you weird dwarf guy? What did you turn yourself into this for? This seems bad.
Who is famously afraid of nothing, stabs him with his sword and delivers a fatal blow. Fatal, but not immediate. In fact, they have quite the dialogue. In the opera Siegfried, who is Sigmund, changed his name for some reason, they have a 10-minute duet. So they do like the chit-chat. And what they talk about...
Oh, it's like freaking JoJo. Or people get their like heads cut off and then they have like 20-minute conversations afterwards.
Sigmund or Siegfried's name. Whose son thou art? Who is Fafnir's blood thy bright blade reddened and struck thy sword to my heart? And Sigurd's like, I don't have a name, or a dad, or a mom. And it's because at the time it was thought that a dying man or dragon's last breath could be a curse. But he had to know the name of the person that he was cursing.
How very Death
So
Note.
if Sigurd didn't tell him his name, no curse. But then Fafnir asks again, and Sigurd, like, gives it all up. He's like, Sigurd's my name, killing dragons my game, my dad is Sigmund, my mother's maiden name is blah, 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 you want my blood type, whatever. He gives it all up.
If you ask me twice, I'll tell you.
Weird. So as you might expect, Fafnir says, I counsel thee, Sigurd, heed my speech, and ride thou homeward hence. For that same gold which I have owned shall now be thy bane as well. So he curses Sigurd, he curses the treasure, and then the dragon dies. And then Regan...
Oh, this is where that, like, ring of that one dwarf guy shows up, right? The, oh, fuck. Like, it's like a... Anyway, there's a ring. And Loki does stuff with the ring. Damn it. I was like, I remember, like, parts of this story and, like, some of the things that came after, but basically it's like a curse on the gold that, like, whoever has it is doomed to die, and like then it can go back to somebody else.
Dwarf comes back and is like, hey, give me some of that sweet, sweet dragon blood, and he drinks his brother's blood. And then he says, sit now, Sigurd, for sleep will I.
So it didn't burn him, even though if it was touching Sigurd, it was gonna burn him, but like it doesn't burn this Regan guy?
I roast Fafnir's heart on the fire, for all his heart shall eaten be, since deep of blood I have drunk. So Sigurd puts the heart on the spit and roasts it. Then, when he thought that it was fully cooked, and the blood foamed out of the heart, then he tried it with his finger to see whether it was fully cooked. He burned his finger and put it in his mouth. But when Fafnir's heart's blood touched his tongue, he understood the speech of birds. Logical, he could understand birds after drinking the blood. Makes sense. And the birds around him happen to be really, really smart. There sits Sigurd sprinkled with blood, and Fafnir's heart with fire he cooks. There Regan lies, and plans he lays, the youth to betray who trusts him well.
Ooh.
Another said, let him smite the head from off him then, and be only lord of all that gold. So basically they say that Regan the dwarf is going to kill you as well, so you should cut off his head before he wakes up.
How do they know?
On the advice of woodpeckers, he does just that. Cuts the dwarf's head off and eats the rest of the dragon heart himself. It imbues him with so much courage that he then goes off to fight his next adventure. And that is why at a feast during the Viking Age, it was customary to give the heart to the king, or whoever the guest of honor was, so that it would imbue them with the characteristics of whatever animal had given their life. Which really makes me wish that I had a dragon heart instead of a pig heart. Oink, oink.
Pigs are so smart though, so maybe it'll make you smarter. Because pigs are very intelligent. The animals, I mean.
Now while your heart roasts, make sure to baste it every 10 to 15 minutes with honey. That way you'll have a nice, sweet heart. And once it hits 160 Fahrenheit or 71 Celsius, take it out of the oven and let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then it's ready to serve. And here we are, roasted heart of the Viking Age. I'm going to slice myself a piece off here.
Ah, I didn't like that noise. Why'd you do that? Cover that taste up, huh?
Heart is not for me. I don't have the stomach for heart, it turns out. I mean, I ate it. The flavor actually, it's not for me. It's very honeyed, but the flavor is not my issue. It's the texture. It's so firm. It's so like, because there's no fat like in the actual meat, it's just so...
See, I said it was going to be gamey, is what I said. Like stringy and gamey. And I just kind of imagined it being like, kind of like when you try to eat like celery, but meat.
It's not rubbery. It's not for me.
I feel like a lot of these, like a lot of organs, tend to just be kind of like, the texture of them is awful. Like I was tricked into trying chicken liver. And I was like, I can't. Like, the texture is just so awful. Like, and gritty and like, ugh. And like, I feel like heart would be similar. And I feel like organs in general have like a bad texture.
Let's just say that. That said, I think that the honey and the leek and all of the filling would be wonderful in any other meat. Heart just isn't from... It's not my bag. Yeah, but that's okay. I don't have to enjoy everything that I make here on the channel. That's part of the fun. I do look forward to making more recipes from an early meal. Most of them, I think, are right up my alley. I don't know why I went with the heart for the first one.
Because it was honey.
Not my best decision, but you know what? It was interesting. Now next week kicks off an entire month, or 4 weeks rather, of ancient Roman recipes. So I'm really excited about that.
Fun.
So make sure to subscribe and follow me on Instagram, Tasting History with Max Miller, and check out the link in the description for your free trial of the Great Courses Plus. And I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Cheers. Fun. All right, that was interesting. Also, I don't think I would like heart either because I don't really like that kind of stuff. I would have a hard time even thinking about eating it, honestly. I have a hard time with ribs. Like I haven't eaten ribs in ever, probably. I don't think I ever did because like I never liked, so like barbecue ribs were always like a big thing, right? But it's like I never liked barbecue. And then so it's like I just never, and so I never tried barbecue ribs. And then like I just don't like the fact that you can tell what they are. Like it's ribs. It's like, and it looks like human baby ribs or something. And I'm like, I can't do it. And so it freaks me out. Like, I mean, I've eaten chicken wings with the bone in. But like when you just look at them straight up, they don't necessarily look like arms. So it doesn't freak me out as bad, I think. I don't know. But in any case, I don't think I could do a heart. And again, I was tricked into eating the chicken liver. I didn't know it was in there. I thought it was something different. I thought it was like just pieces of chicken. Didn't realize it was liver until like I was trying to eat it. And I was like, this is nasty. Anyway, thank you for watching this. Again, I'm going to give his video a like. So you should give my video a like. And then let me know what I should look at in the next one. Bye-bye.